What's your thought going into this meeting? And is this a smart time for Zohran Mamdani to sit down with Donald Trump?
It's good to see you. Thanks for having me. I think this is very smart because New York City is not Portland. With all respect to Portland, you know, New York City represents the 9th largest economy in the world, and its success equates to the president's success. It equates to America's success. So some of the traditional tools at Donald Trump's disposal, completely cutting off federal funding, disrupting the operations of the city with massive deployment of the National Guard, I think he implicitly understands that can't be on the table when it comes to New York City. On the same hand as well, while the White House and New York City certainly need one another, I would say as politicians, Mamdani and Donald Trump also need one another as foils. So you're going to see them walking this incredibly fine line where they will look to preserve some level of economic partnership, some tertiary focus on affordability. But I also would not be surprised if we do see some level of political showmanship, some level of show business during this so they can each rev up their respective bases.
Well, Congressman, I hope I'm not being too starry-eyed here, but in a best-case scenario, for those that care about affordability and the conversation around it, even among two men who don't agree on pretty much anything, what can we hope for? You mentioned economic partnership. What could they do or say that would inspire some change on that front?
Look, under the best of circumstances, we would see the federal government maintain its pledges and promises to New York City, particularly in regards to these infrastructure projects that have been canceled. One of the points, though, here where I see the greatest conflict during this conversation is in and around immigration enforcement. You know, Mamdani has, and I think he's right to note this, has established that the NYPD should not play a role in this kind of forthright, very aggressive immigration enforcement that Donald Trump has pushed ICE towards. That is clearly against Donald Trump's agenda. So, you know, under the best of circumstances, you would see this moment where they say, let's just get down to business and grow the economy. But it just seems so unlikely considering how far apart these two individuals are.
We talked to Andrew Garbarino yesterday about this meeting and what he was hoping might come from it. Granted, a Republican said that he hoped that Donald Trump would have some tough words for Zohran Mamdani when it came to supporting law enforcement and to take back some of the things that he has said about law enforcement in the past. Is that a productive exercise?
Garbarino, and this is, I think, my point, like you can't take the politics out of politics. And with respect to Congressman Garbarino, this is an element of playing politics, right? I mentioned $18 billion in infrastructure funds. I mentioned continued federal funding to support law enforcement in New York City. Let's not forget as well that New York City is the #1 terrorist target, certainly in America and perhaps in the world. So the partnership, the national security partnership between the NYPD and the federal government is essential. If you want to actually think about the future of New York City, those are the things you're going to talk about in this meeting. If you want to play politics, right, what you're going to do is you're going to talk about past statements. You're going to make it really soundbite oriented. You're going to make it very social media oriented. There's a lot of people on both sides of the aisle that would like this to be a strictly political conversation. That's not certainly for the good of New York City, but man, would it be good for the Republican base out in Long Island. That's probably where Garbarino's coming from.
Well, Congressman, if you're advising the mayor-elect on today and you want to have him use the politics for the better, what would you tell him to say on the security issue, on the safety issue, on the immigration issue that might placate the president or get him to perk up and listen?
Well, I think neither side is going to be looking to placate the other one. You cannot they will never end up on the ideologically same side. But what's interesting here is that Mayor-elect Mamdani has an opportunity to call out Donald Trump for his failed promises on affordability. Remember, most political analysts would say that Donald Trump won because President Biden had failed on the issue of affordability, and Donald Trump highlighted it. Now, of course, it does not seem that he has really governed with affordability as a priority. Tariffs don't do anything good for affordability. Certainly, we've seen inflation continue to be a problem, the price of food continuing to go up. There is an area where if Mamdani maintains disciplined focus just on constantly bringing the conversation back to that, there's an opportunity to put Donald Trump in a very weird and awkward political situation. It should also be noted here that Mamdani is taking a political risk coming out here and sitting with Donald Trump. There's plenty of the Democratic base that would not want this moment, wouldn't want Mamdani sitting there, shaking his hand, offering to do things that would help ensure, yes, New York City is successful, but also that inherently Donald Trump would be successful then, too. So they're both taking, and even Mamdani maybe more so than Trump, is taking a political risk here, I think in support of New York City.
Well, we'll see what comes of this. Max Rose, should Mamdani, if reporters are not allowed in the Oval Office, come out to the stakeout position in the driveway and talk to the media after to frame what happened?
You know, Donald Trump committed during an interview this morning to invite the press in. You know, this is going to be an Oval Office meeting.
It hasn't happened yet.
Right, but it's going to be an Oval Office meeting where, you know, it's going to look like, I think, a setup similar to what they do with heads of state. I'm not exactly sure how they're going to structure it.
Yeah, they'll be at the fireplace doing the whole thing. Right. We're just still waiting. You've got a press pool in the briefing room waiting to find out if they're invited, but we'll assume that that's going to happen.
It takes two to tango, though, right? And I would be shocked, though, if Mayor-elect Mamdani didn't decide to do that, because he's a politician and politicians love cameras. So Donald Trump already committed to doing it. So certainly I would bet that it's going to happen, and I'd be curious if it doesn't.